Okay, so this is gonna be different. I've been working on this new gaming channel with my buds. I would love if you guys checked it out. I've worked mainly on the editing. It would be awesome if you guys could support it by subscribing to see us scream, play video games, and have more content. Check it out at Ordinary Species. That's Ordinary Species with the 0. Anyways, let's get to the video. So most of you know when gaming consoles were such a massive deal. I mean, don't get me wrong, gaming still has that similar effect to this day, but not as much as we remembered growing up. Say from the 90s or the 2000s, you know, the golden age of gaming when it blew our minds. You know what I mean? How about this? Let's compare to the time gaming first hit the scene. It all started in 1958 with our good friend Willie Higginbotham. It's something like that. A physicist that used small analog computers to create waves and curves. It took William a few hours to develop a game similar to Pong or tennis. And this was before those. It was a simple game that became enjoyable when he would receive visitors. William showed them another version using an oscilloscope with a tiny display, only 5 inches in diameter, then updating the screen to be more significant. It was impressive and entertaining at the time. Fast forward to the arcade era. During this time, it revolutionized the idea of pinball machines that followed a similar premise: pay to play. Any arcade game had the same concept of costing a small fee to play another round of good old Pong, Street Fighter, and Pac-Man. These specialized machines were the best for kids to play with throughout the 70s to the 90s, playing to beat the highest score on the leaderboard, beating your friends in a fighting game, puzzle games for your amusement, you name it. The arcade style of gaming was phenomenal. At least for a while it was. In 1972, the Odyssey was declared as the first home console. No one could ever suspect having a device in their home to play video games. This console held a few games deemed playable, but then you had the Atari. This console was the thing your mom knew about when she was your age. So I bet some of your parents are old if they knew what this was. One stick, one button, that's all you ever needed. Or is it? Oh yeah. 1985, the Nintendo Entertainment System, now featuring 2 buttons and a D-pad and 2 smaller buttons. This was my dad's jam. The console from Japan was the Famicom, later dubbed the NES. There was a masterpiece of collections from Legend of Zelda to Metroid, Super Mario, Contra, Kirby, Mega Man, and Castlevania. Come on guys, this was peak. The Nintendo gaming market was through the roof since the NES grew so popular. Nintendo kept going with its line of games and profited. Then, what was that? Oh boy. Right around the start of the 90s, the Blue Boy showed up and said, hey, I want a piece of that action too. Sega formed the Sega Genesis, a 16-bit console that joined the competition. Nintendo began to notice and fought back against Sega with the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. That was also the beginning of an era called the Console Wars. Nintendo versus Sega, duking it out to see who was the best gaming company. I wasn't around then, but I could guarantee that this started many fights in the playgrounds. Could you believe kids argued against a red plumber and a blue hedgehog? Like, legitimately, can you see how funny that sounds out loud? Of course, there was bound to be a winner out of all of this, right? Why do I even talk? While the war between Sega and Nintendo kept happening, a new business started buzzing around. It was 1994, and Sony had introduced the unique gaming console on the market, the PlayStation. Sony had taken a massive leap into the third dimension of gaming, which was insane. It was so insane that Nintendo and Sega realized this was serious. The PlayStation gave people a new variety of games and started sweeping the competition. Except that didn't mean both companies were giving up. In 1996, Nintendo introduced the Nintendo 64, their next level of 3D gaming. They were also accompanied by Rare to make more incredible games. Sega needed to catch up, ironically, when they tried to make their own 3D titles. So they manufactured the Sega Dreamcast, a sleek, futuristic design that stood out from the rest. Unfortunately, the Dreamcast couldn't match up to Nintendo and Sony's marketing, so this was the end of Sega's run of creating consoles. So instead, they became a third-party company that would at least make video games. It was sad, but that's how life is when you get outmatched by 2 companies that take the spotlight. Oh yeah, except for these guys. Things are about to get wild. It was the 2000s, well specifically 2001, when Microsoft released the Xbox, and this console set the bar, and I mean like a really high bar. The new games transformed or even evolved, and this console changed the gaming scene for the next few years. Except Sony said, oh no you don't. So these two companies were in a new console war, and they went back to back with their latest iterations of their original consoles. In contrast, every game that came out with them was a blast. Even when Nintendo was working on its latest console, it was awesome. The GameCube was the next-gen home console that brought high-quality graphics, multiplayer games, a fancy new controller design, and Melee. Now, the demographic at this time was mixed. We had players that enjoyed the new games with the GameCube and its compatible features, except everyone else liked the PS2 and Xbox. Speaking of PS2, it was an actual upgrade from the original PlayStation. This guy was also slim. This is also the same one my older brother and I owned as kids. We played all types of PS2 games, and the console was also compatible with PS1 games. Just don't forget the memory card. The games were fire when it was on the PlayStation 2, and Sony was the next company to profit from their success. So what did Microsoft do? They made another Xbox with a strange name. At least Sony knew how to count. The 360 had its ups and downs regarding performance, but overall was well received, with different iterations and designs. At the same time, they altered the Duke to be a more comfortable controller. Sony clapped back with the PlayStation 3. See, it's not that hard, Microsoft. It's 1, 2, and 3, not 1 and 360. It makes no sense. The PlayStation 3 was very well received and created a new type of gaming, third-person storytelling. You had Uncharted taking you on an Indiana Jones style adventure like no other. You also had the grim apocalyptic drama from The Last of Us. These games were created by the same people who made Crash Bandicoot on the original PlayStation. And these two franchises were made by artists who created the best games ever. But nothing compares to the most significant brain move that Nintendo pulled off.
We would like to play.
The Wii was an enormous hit when it was first announced. Take the games you grew up with on the NES, the SNES, the Nintendo 64, and the GameCube, then put them in one slim console, then use the said console with the remote to play games with up to 4 players. You can't deny that you didn't want it. You had to buy it. The Wii was such a success that Nintendo had the privilege of selling to you and inviting you to play with your friends and family. It had a charm that made it so cool. It even had a port for GameCube controllers and memory cards to play any GameCube title. Looking to play the NES and 64 games? Look no further than the Wii Shop Store. Want to create an avatar for your game? Mii Channel's got you covered. New games? You had to ask? Almost all the games designed for the Wii included motion control, which immersed players within their game as they performed said action. For example, Wii Sports was a simple yet entertaining game, and everyone enjoyed the fun quality that Nintendo put into it. Even the music was such a bop. I would kill you if you denied that. There was no way the Wii could have been forgotten when it brought so many memories to everyone who played it. Good times. How did everyone else respond? You know what they say, if you can't beat them, copy what they did. But worse. Sony made the PlayStation Move with motion controls and remotes. Microsoft made the Xbox Kinect, using a camera for motion controls. Oh god, these were bad. I can't. I just can't. I'm moving on. I just can't right now. I'm moving on. Nintendo did make another version of the Wii U, but now you had a touchpad. It wasn't as successful as they thought it would be during this time. The 3DS did come alongside it, but I'm talking about home consoles, and handhelds are another topic. By 2013, Sony and Microsoft made the latest consoles with different values. Sony introduced the PlayStation 4 and Microsoft the Xbox One. Are you serious? You're counting backwards. Why? So the PS4 brought new and original games from their previous consoles to their store for people to access. The Xbox One had similar features, but became more of a streaming device that plays games than just a standard console. I mean, okay, that was a thing then. Sony made more games and Microsoft was probably going through a phase or something, I don't know.
Movies, TV. Xbox, watch TV. TV.
In 2017, Nintendo created the Nintendo Switch. It's also interesting because it can be considered a home console by putting it in a dock and a handheld device to carry on the go. It was a much needed success compared to the Wii U. Strangely, it felt like Nintendo took all their previous console ideas and formed the best version of it to the present day. It was another brilliant idea too, where you had a piece of nostalgia from the features it used, even though the resolutions are different depending on your use. It brings enjoyable games and classics in one spot, and you can take it anywhere you want. Finally, we have our latest consoles to this day, or in the 2020s. Whatever year it is you're watching this. The PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, Microsoft, please stop with these names. The next gen consoles run your favorite games at fast speeds, 60 to 120 FPS, online gaming and beautiful graphics that challenge their previous entries. Sony makes amazing games that support the PS5 with amazing visuals and storytelling. Xbox has that similar premise, but is slowly looking for more companies to make more games with its incredible specs. It was so cool to finally see the newest consoles running like any game with such incredible speeds. It almost feels washed up even when you feel like they did the impossible. You know what I mean? The games I grew up with don't have that same effect as the new ones. Plus, everyone has become a critic on the internet, making it hard to know what game is good unless the games that are made look good but play like trash because of terrible time and management. That's what's changed a lot since gaming peaks back then to where it is now. The quality can be there, but can the developers take care of it? Or will it crash and burn? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And what are your favorite consoles growing up? I know there was more home consoles made back then, but I wanted to discuss the ones made by the most prominent companies that lasted for years. Thanks for watching. If you want to support my channel, please consider subscribing, and I would love to make more content. And do you guys like this format? Because I'd like to keep doing more. Don't forget to check out the gaming channel at Our Ordinary Species with 0. I'll leave a link in the description.